So I get a glass of water. She goes to her room. Jesse comes. Fuck! In this video, I'm going to be talking about the 5 accounts of abuse that happened over the past 7 years in houses that I was renting. I have accrued upwards of $250,000 in personal loans in the last 7 years.
I will personally say it is really hard. Like, me personally, I'm really vindictive and like, I don't know if that's a good word here because I'm not out here trying to like kill people.
I recently went through a very traumatic experience. It was very, very traumatic. I was outed in a story of me getting physically abused.
You're $250,000 in fucking debt. You could have been streaming this entire time. You have just wasted your goddamn life, you stupid mother.
The parasite of the Smash community technicals, that cockroach doesn't deserve any attention. If you get to a point in your life where you think getting blocked is something to be happy about, you're a fucking failure.
People on the internet immediately went to dig and try to find the most thoughtiest or like most condemning things about me and try to paint me in this light. And, you know, again, there's not really anything on me, to be honest.
When it comes to building an empire, there may be a time when everything comes crashing down. I fucking did it. You have no idea how long that took. What people remember isn't the toppled monuments to your success, but rather the steps through which everything you built was dismantled. Because as the age-old adage will tell you, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. My job is to make sure the past we create is one written in pen and not blood. The story of the Sky House is far from an open and shut case, and I think it's about time I told you why. I'm amazed I even have to do this, but quick disclaimer, don't send any death threats or harassment to anyone discussed in this video. If you're doing that, you're not a fan of mine. I mean, Zero did that in all of his statements, but that didn't stop Leffen and Jisoo from posting about it constantly. So I doubt this will stop them, but I'm simply saying, don't do that shit. If you're unfamiliar with the Sky House, simply put, it was a collective of Smash elites, artists, and freeloaders who were all under the wing of one content creator. The one whose name would become synonymous with the mass exodus from Smash and his subsequent downfall, which can all be traced back to one roommate, Jisoo. But who is Jisoo? Well, she's an artist, a self-proclaimed activist.
In my position as one of the more well-known like minorities, I almost felt like a duty to do whatever I can to push the movement.
But most importantly, she's the catalyst to the entirety of the statements released against Sky Williams and Zero. Quite recently, she's known for selling $1,000 GameCube controllers and defending NFTs. I find the latter particularly interesting because in doing so, she has to grapple with the fact that she's a climate activist that also justifies environmental damage. Because money. But there's no way this would become a pattern of behavior where she claims to be an activist for a movement and then creates a wordy document that directly contradicts her beliefs. On July 5th, Jisoo would release a 64-page document.
My big 64-page Google document, which I'm sure not everybody absorbed every point from.
Wait, that doesn't look right. Scratch that. 58-page document. I forgot she had to go back and remove one of the stories because it ended up being a lie she propagated without anyone's approval or consent. And even then, the document is actually 12 pages if you remove all the blurry screenshots she added for no reason when there's already links to all of the images. A fake story making it into the final draft at all should have been impossible, because if you read the top of her document, it says, "Any and all information here has been submitted, reviewed, and then approved by the victims mentioned. In no way should I or anyone ever push information out without due cause. It is up to those involved to share at their discretion. Thus, we should respect them for being able to share what they can and speaking up about it."
I make it clear to them, like, I'm not going to share anything unless you explicitly want me to. You're free to say anything you want, like, nothing is going to be aired out. I'm not judging you, and it's not your fault.
She tried to say that Zero's girlfriend at the time, Vanessa, was 15 when they started dating. and Zero was 20. However, with the use of my genius-level intellect and 2 entire Google searches, I was able to debunk this pretty quickly. Don't worry though, guys, it was just one of those heated moments. You know, where you circumvent your ethical consistency because someone replied to a tweet? Like any good detective, I wanted to make sure that I was right beyond a reasonable doubt. And what better way to do that than to ask the man himself? So, Zero, when did you start dating Vanessa?
Well, I started dating Vanessa second half of 2015 or so.
So, at the time that you met her in 2015, if you do the math properly, she would be like 17 and you would be 19, right?
Somewhere along those lines, yeah.
Because in Jisoo's story, she's very adamant to both Sky and in her document and on Twitter that the age gap was 5 years, Vanessa being 15 and you being 20 years old. It almost seemed like a rumor that was going around, like Vanessa was hiding her age in the house.
Vanessa never really hid her age whatsoever. I think one thing to note though is that I met Vanessa maybe half of 2015, but we didn't start dating until later. I think people like for some reason thought I was older or something. The age gap between me and Vanessa has never been more than 2 years. For example, right now I'm 26, just turned 26, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she's going to be turning 24 very soon. That's how the ages work. I don't know why 5 years was claimed though. That's never been true.
Now at this point, you probably think I'm not being very charitable to Jisoo. She is, after all, a victim in this situation. And I'd agree with you, but Jisoo won't let me.
If you make shit up to cancel someone, like actually, just for like your 10 seconds of fame, you're a piece of shit. So anyways.
One important note I didn't go over. If you actually make false allegations and hurt the cases of current and future victims purely for your own selfish reasons, then you're the fucking scum of the earth.
Come on now, don't be so hard on yourself, Jisoo. Most Me Too activists accidentally give a woman PTSD because their story would go great in a headline.
I just stopped using social media for a bit. I deleted my Twitter. That event gave me PTSD. Like, I've never suffered from PTSD or anything like that.
My question to the audience is, how many people do you have to give PTSD before you're considered an abuser? Keep that in the back of your head, we'll be answering it at the end of the program. Now that we've established Jisoo is more than comfortable betraying her morals for a juicy paragraph, let's orange justice our way into showing a minor hentai. And yes, that is unfortunately a quote from Hitler. Out of everything that happened in July, ranging from child abuse to organized character assassinations, I think the worst thing would have to be showing someone porn. Or at least that's what you'd think if you read any of Leffen or Jisoo's tweets. Showing porn to a minor, 19 to 15-year-old, if I remember correctly, is literally considered sexual harassment in many jurisdictions. It's not just fucking hentai. Have you ever tricked someone into going to meetspin.com? Well, newsflash, dumbass, it's not just two gay niggas.
This has taken me tremendous deliberation, but I'm sorry, Zero. You were showing me explicit Craigslist ads of sex workers and hentai on the big screen, and constantly harassing me at the Sky House when I was 15. My work here is done.
Really? That was the best that you can? A single post with absolutely no details and a self-congratulatory post was the best you could do? Clearly that's not true because 3 days later you dropped a 12-page essay. Also, a quick side note, but Jisoo was never 15 years old when all of this was happening. Her birthday is April 3rd, 1998, which would have made her 16 2 months before she ever arrived at Sky's house. It's just a little inaccuracy, so it's not that bad, but what happens when those start to pile up? Since I don't really have the funds to hire Dr. K, I'm just gonna diagnose this using WebMD. Signs of lying. Contradictory stories. She states that Zero was never a really good friend, and says their relationship was more like a business acquaintance or a roommate.
We were never really good friends. The messages we were sending were like, we're roommates and we live with each other and like we don't hate each other and we get along, but like to try to manipulate to like the public and to like all your 300, 400,000 followers that we have some kind of like kinship or whatever, it's like, are you kidding me? You only ever came to me for artwork.
But then 2 hours later calls him someone who had a big presence in her life and someone that was very close to her.
He was still very much this like strong presence, and same with like D1 and all these people. Like they were all very close to me. You want to give them the chances to like actually fucking own up, but they never do. That's why it hurts. That's why it's so much more shocking every single time. It's just
you also see people.
Someone can't be close to you while simultaneously not being your friend. That is unless you've been reading up on Sun Tzu, in which case You go, girl. Not quite sure how to diagnose pretending to be someone's friend, but I'm sure someone on the internet will do it for me. Unverifiable details. Where do I start? There's no date, no time, no witnesses, no logs, and no details of what was shown in regards to the accusations. Think about it for a second. Zero and Jisoo shared their room with 3 other people. You're telling me there isn't a single person at least referenced as a witness, a confidant, or had at least heard of this while living in the house when this was supposedly displayed on the big screen television?
That doesn't even sound like something he would do. Maybe that's something he does on his own time, but to just throw it up on the big screen, especially with how crowded the room was, I feel like it's weird that she would make that claim and then nobody else with how crowded our houses were at any given time be able to back that up. I don't know where she at with that one. I'm disagree. I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. We would get on you for like walking slightly funny. So some shit like watching hentai on a big screen, we would have ate Zero alive. So
to me, when I heard about it, I'm like, you show me hentai. I was like, okay, that's weird. And then the second part that threw me off the puzzle was when she said Craigslist sex workers. I'm like, what does that mean? And that to me was a red flag because I didn't really use Craigslist. I looked into it right after she made that claim, and I found out that Craigslist has been under the microscope for basically people solicit sexual activity in that website, and there's insane moderation going on. Like, for example, if you go on that website and you post anything, it has to be approved by a moderator, and if you put pictures, it has to be seen by somebody. So you're telling me that I used a website that I don't really use, and I happened to find content that's not supposed to be there, and then I showed her. It's not like I was on an actual website that does this type of content, so that part threw me off.
She also continued a friendly relationship with Zero over DMs and in person without ever addressing this when it's presented as a serious accusation. How the fuck am I supposed to take this seriously when you treat it like a running gag on a TV show? I'm in all your fucking heads right now, so I already know what you're about to say.
But Technicals, don't you remember Leffen? He said that Zero's looking at hentai with Japanese players. Isn't that a little bit sus?
Yeah, that certainly would be, except it never happened. You were saying how one of the Japanese players that were actually involved in this story, that were in the room at Apex 2013, came to you and it kind of explained the situation and also vouched for kind of your retelling of how things happened.
Yeah, so when Leffen told the story, I literally did not remember a single detail about it. At the time, I was so pressured from all of these other scenarios that I just kind of said, okay, fine. If Leffen is saying this, then sure, maybe it happened and I don't remember. And it's not like there's like surveillance camera footage to check, right?
Yeah.
So I just said, that's fine. I'll just apologize. I later learned that me apologizing was seen as me admitting fault, which was weaponized against me later. And people took it as fact. And therefore, they took Jackie's story as fact, which to me is a massive problem because Jackie's story had zero details whatsoever. But because I apologized to Leffen, suddenly it became that now I'm guilty for Jackie. To be honest, it felt like a trap. It felt like it was a planned moment. That's when I realized that what's happening to me right now is not one person, it's multiple people.
Oh, and you're gonna love this. You know the other accusation that Leffen was pushing when he totally wasn't getting too involved for no reason at all, where Zero was supposedly showing hentai to minors? The only time that ever happened was when one of Zero's mods literally begged him to send it to him, and Zero made the mistake of assuming his age. Every other instance of this happening, even with the same piece of media, there's textual evidence of Zero confirming that they are over 18 years of age.
I made this animation when you gifted 100 subs because at the time in my stream I had this viewer that will donate an absurd amount of money. So I decided to make a sub alert that I knew he would trigger, which basically was my anime character, mascot, dancing on a pole with a bunny outfit. And then people were like, oh my god, dude, you have to send like the full animation, right? Because the animation makes it seem like there's like more to it. And there was more to it because we made it on this engine from like an actual porn game, right? Because I mean, how else would you do it? I'm not a 3D animator, right? And people started begging me on the chat. And well, you know, I was just like, okay, fine. If you're like 18 and you know you tier 3 to the channel, which is like $25 or something, yeah, sure, I'll send you the stupid thing. And I started sending people these like little disclaimers. You agree that you're 18 and you agree that you have sold me raw liability, because I'm not stupid, right? I knew that if I send this to a minor, you can't know if it's a minor or not. Now, if people lied about it or people lied about their age or something like that, there's nothing I can do about that.
And what happened with the one moderator?
So they were a very useful community member at the time, contributed a whole lot. So they kind of came around and said, hey, can I have the thing, right? And I was like, yeah, sure, here you go. And And I met this person multiple times in person. It did not look to me like a minor, but it's not like you can tell. I mean, some people can look 16, right? And they can be 20 and vice versa. So that's poor judgment from me. But the point is that a very helpful community member that I'm in contact with regularly that asked me for this, and I just sent it to them because they basically begged me for it. And then after the fact, they were like, you know, when all this stuff is happening, they kind of come out and say, oh yeah, I was underage when that happened, so you send that stuff to an underage person. And I'm like, really, dude? Like, it's not like they ever told me they were underage. To me, it almost seems like deception, because, you know, they begged me for the content but then trapped me into, oh, you did a bad thing, when the only reason I sent it was because they begged me.
Overly dramatic or long stories.
That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because even if it's not what those people are looking for, I know at least to like the minority that does get it, like that will make a difference. You can do everything perfect, and I think I've demonstrated that.
I was outed in a story of me getting physically abused and how my age was something else, which is not true at all.
You can do everything perfect, and I think I've demonstrated that. It doesn't matter how perfect you are, there is an attitude that needs to change. That's why I'm trying to address this.
Jisoo talked to every available journalist, featured on 2 live streams, put Batman in her bio, and demanded a wellness check on Zero be taken down after a suicide attempt because it showed a lack of empathy for those he harmed, while reminding everyone about an entirely unrelated suicide attempt of her own. Overly dramatic would be an understatement. Also, quick question, but how the fuck is anyone supposed to do a wellness check on the 2 women who were entirely anonymous? Unless you're seriously suggesting that they should have checked on you to make sure you weren't suicidal after he showed you hentai? Because if that's the case, according to my browsing history, I think I also could use a wellness check. While there are other and more serious issues revolving around Zero's removal from the community, I don't think that's an invitation to start lying and being opportunistic, especially when you're seen as the mouthpiece for women dealing with these issues. I like to be fair though, so let's take a quick look at the actual cases of abuse that happened in the Sky House, starting with Jisoo. Jisoo's story begins with a game developer named Jesse.
Trigger warning, abuser identified. Please delete
What the
now.
fuck?
Trigger warning, abuser identified.
Oh, wait, I don't care. And neither should you. For some reason, Jisoo really wanted to hammer it in that saying her abuser's name was a big no-no. Not only because of her personal grievances, but also because she got legal counsel and they said that might not be the best idea. But if she really had a problem with identifying her abuser, then why would she allow the journalist Jacob Wolf to identify him as Vidjo when referring to her censored 2018 Me Too post? If you Google Vidjo, you can instantly find his full real name, his birthday, and the place that he was born. She also put it in her bio titled My Story, essentially co-signing the entire piece. If you have a decent lawyer, I'm sure they'd tell you that any legal defense you were banking on is sure as fuck gone by now. Considering how upset you were at Sky for doing this, it's amazing how cooperative you were with a news article doing the exact same thing. I don't particularly have a problem with that, it just seems a little counterproductive to attack someone for naming the person actually responsible. Unless, of course, your goal is to shift the blame.
I don't think anyone should ever feel like they did something wrong. They shouldn't feel like it was totally their sole responsibilities to stop something in every situation, because the truth of it is that the person doing the thing should just not be doing it in the first place. That accountability should be held with them, not with you.
Oh, and you probably didn't know this, but I was talking to the same YouTuber as you at the same time while he was making this video, where you were basically saying you wanted him to talk about your abuser. Yeah, that whole legal defense, doubly fucked. I wouldn't even try it. Now that we got the fake he who shall not be named outrage aside, let's get to the meat of this case. Again, I feel like I have to do this. Do not go out and harass any of the people I'm about to talk about. This is just to give you the unedited version of what went down to get you all up to speed. When Jisoo was 16, she moved all the way from Ohio to the Sky House in California. People will often ask, how did a 16-year-old end up living with Sky? And the answer is a little bit more complicated than it seems. Originally, the plan was for Sky to live with Mewtwo King in Seattle. Mewtwo King was also trying to get his friend at the time, Vidjo, to live with them as well, since he was a top player in Melee and was also very skilled in game design. He had also been planning to fund a game that Vidjo would be working on at the house, but to do that, they'd also need some capable artists to design it. In none of the chat logs with either M2K or Vidjo is there any mention of a 16-year-old girl moving into the house. However, there is mention of one of the future roommates, Mark, who would be living in the room with Vidjo, Jisoo, M2K, and whoever was being circulated throughout the house at the time. How is this significant, you might ask? Well, Sky was now forced in a position where a young girl who escaped an abusive household had three options. A, force her to go back home, B, find her another place to live, or C, allow her to stay and work on the game. Of course, in hindsight, A and B seemed like the obvious choice, but option C seemed like he was just letting an ambitious artist continue a passion project, a choice that he, and many others, would later come to regret. 2 months after everyone had settled in, Vigio asked Sky to sign paperwork so that Jisoo could have proof of residency to go to school. At the same time, Sky asked Vigio, "Okay, before I do this, I need you to be honest with me, like for real. Just me. No judgments. Are you two sexually intimate at all?" To which Vigio responds, "LOL, no." This confrontation seemed purely out of a speculative concern for Jisoo, and wouldn't have much of a concrete basis until 4 months later in December, where D1 jokingly comments about the sound of condom wrappers and sex in the morning. The rumors would begin to spread more rapidly, and with the already deteriorating relationships within the household, Vigio decided to leave with Jisoo to Ohio the next month. The entirety of Jisoo's stay under Sky's supervision spanned only 7 months, ranging from June 2014 all the way to January 2015. Now that you know the basics, let's revisit Jisoo's TwitLonger and address some of the accusations made against Sky.
I don't know what Sky is ever thinking about, besides himself. He is so manipulative, unfeeling, and flippant that I have written him off as a psychopath.
I'm gonna stop you right there, Hacks. I know this isn't much of a surprise, but at the very beginning of your document, you said that you were going to try to remain impartial, and then at the very beginning of the segment, you completely write him off as a psychopath. I'm gonna say the same thing I did about Hacks' video. Neither of you have a degree in psychology, so this is not only unnecessary, but also stupid. Secondly, and I mean this with 100% sincerity, do you know what impartial means? Impartial, treating all rivals or disputants equally, fair and just, unbiased, unprejudiced, neutral, nonpartisan, non-discriminatory. I would call this a very biased document. I would even call this unequivocally prejudiced. The last thing I'd call it is impartial. I mean, even I'm being somewhat biased in this video right now, but that's just because I'm not very fond of liars.
On top of already allowing a 15-year-old runaway girl to live in the house filled with alcohol, drugs, and several old men, he attempted to chide me into moving back in with him in a similar living situation right after I got out of hell, but in exchange for work.
Wow, that sounds downright predatory and opportunistic. That is until I saw how the screenshots end right before he tells you that the choice is entirely up to you and you could just visit the house if you felt like it. Then 2 weeks later, you actually call him up on his offer to buy you plane tickets to come down to the house. How that context 5 messages later didn't make the final cut is honestly insane, guys. I'm sure it had something to do with her commitment to being impartial and truthful, or whatever buzzwords will make you stop thinking about the content of what I'm saying. I also want to highlight how Jisoo implements a strategy where she'll say a bunch of negative shit that's happened to her and then immediately try to make an irrelevant point afterwards. If it was just once, I'd probably let it slide. That makes sense. But this is so obviously sympathy baiting, it's not even funny. Death threat. A lie she made up. Death threat. The environmental damage of NFTs. Death threats. Taking down a YouTube video. Trauma. Deplatforming. I fail to see how Sky streaming negatively affects you in any way. He can't even get a job after all the articles dropped because of background checks. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt now because most people probably didn't know this, but you would basically be killing him. That's not to be dramatic just for this YouTube video. I mean that you would literally be depriving him of food and shelter, potentially resulting in death, or at the very least homelessness. So, how have you been doing lately, Sky? I know you've been off of social media for a while. You haven't been posting to YouTube, but I have seen you stream a couple times.
I have not been doing well. I've just kind of been existing, but I wouldn't even call it that. Like, I know that sounds like really dramatic, but it actually is that bad, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by that? Like not existing?
Every single part of my life is just is gone. And I can't resume a normal life because all the background checks I've tried, I've just failed them. When you put your name Sky Williams and you have such a huge gap of like work history, you want to explain, oh, I was an influencer, and then they're going to look you up. And then that's when you don't get the call back. I was fired from 3 therapists that like looked up what was going on and then was like, oh, actually, I don't think that I can help you, or I don't think we'd be a good fit. And it's like, I didn't know that you can get fired from a therapist.
I didn't either.
I would talk about the fact that I believe, since everyone else believes it, and even I've said it, even though Dr. K disavowed it, everyone believes that I'm this psychopath, that I'm a sociopath, that I'm this huge mass manipulator. And so if that's true, and I'm tricking myself, then maybe a therapist would be able to tell me. So then when they ask why they think I believe that, I have to go into some sort of detail about my life. And once I do, it's over.
I didn't cross out information about what studio and who's involved with it because it's already been all debunked. But in general, any and all projects involving Sky have always been false grandiose promises with no actual pay.
Huh. I wonder whose video she plugged here. Well, will you look at that? I guess since I'm the one who debunked Thunder Gaming, that would by default make me the authority on the subject, since you yourself linked me as your source. I made an hour-long video talking over all the specifics and the financials with Bishop if you're interested, but long story short, I misread one of the quarterly reports for AMLH, and it turns out that he actually made no money from the company.
Oh yeah, here it is. Operating expense. This is what I wanted you to see, man. Look at the salaries.
That's in total, or like for each person?
This is total. So a year into the business, there was nothing. There was no money. When you say like, hey, the guy's a con man, he got rich. Not only did I give back half my shares for the businesses, but then we weren't even taking paychecks the entire time.
So to call it a scam would not only be incorrect, but also technically defamatory. In fact, I'm almost certain that if you were under contract as a lead artist with Thunder Gaming, even if it did come late, you would most definitely receive a paycheck. I mean, look at fucking MVD. He's still with them. Don't you think he would have made a post by now? Like, come on, let's be real. While a case can be made for Sky's debt from constant loans, this last point is verifiably false.
I also found it so strange that he's trying to do this right after I got out of my situation and was recovering. It's downright predatory and opportunistic, and I hope it's easy to see that. Unfortunately, I think people will fall for him because he turns around and does the good guy shtick almost immediately after.
I'm supposed to hate Sky because he offered you a job as a lead artist, a place to live while you're doing it, and funds to fight your sexual abuser? Throw some of that predatory shit my way, damn! This is the most privileged complaining I've ever heard since Esam went on stream and cried because he wasn't born black.
Hey y'all, just wanted to record a quick video talking about something I've been thinking about.
I'm just joking, that never happened. But imagine though.
One reason why I have remained friendly with him is because he still has connections to my former abuser. I don't think he is intentionally using this to steer me, but I am also unsure if this is a lie, but who knows.
This point is so paranoid for no reason. In this screenshot, 4 months before any statements were made, any public statements at all, Sky reached out to Jisoo and offered to call out her abuser, to which Jisoo declines the offer. Trust me, I think everyone who allowed this shit to go down should be held somewhat accountable for their negligence. But when Jisoo not only defended Jesse while living in the house and rarely communicated with anyone.
When we lived there, he immediately from the bat, he's like, hey, I don't like these people. Don't get close to them. You know, me only knowing him, I was like, I just trusted him.
And then also denies all of Sky's help after the fact. Realistically, what is he supposed to do that everyone else did? Because no one else got called out, and unless I'm mistaken, none of them offered money for legal fees, a place to stay, or a job, or a call out for her abuser. In fact, she joined a group chat with other people who did know what was going on, and one of her own alleged abusers, for some reason, I don't know, don't ask too many questions, where she would review and orchestrate statements that would come out against Sky.
We got him, boys. Don't say anything until he posts. We'll see what he says so you guys can rip it apart, unless he actually comes clean.
I'm so glad this was only about justice, or else I'd have to make a 30-minute video about it.
After talking more, he started to make such crazy claims, like even attempting to call CPS, or things like putting his career on the line, which I do not recall, period. Also important to note is that this is clearly a farce. Let's be real, if he called CPS, he would have been fucked.
Can't really say if Sky did or didn't call CPS, because apparently he did that on his own. But what I can verify is that right after Jisoo and Jesse left the house, Jisoo says to Sky,
"You really were a light in the darkness, when I felt cornered and backed in, and I really love that you decided to stay by and ask me what's wrong, even when I didn't say anything. And even if you think I'm a weirdo, or if I'm not actually your friend, I think you were more of a friend to me than most have been in crucial situations."
This conversation suggests that Sky was at least checking up on her well-being and how how she was doing while she was in the house. But if you read her document, you would assume that the unnamed roommate was the only one to do so, which I highly doubt, just simply based off of their chat logs. But again, it's a he said, she said, so take it with a grain of salt.
Even more confusing is that before, whenever I brought up how he never paid me, he just ignored/ghosted me. This resulted me in giving up. But when I brought it up again, look at how his story has changed.
This is also false. The first time that Jisoo ever asked Sky about the Falcon in DMs, Sky responds, "How much do you want for the Falcon? I don't care about money." To which she responded, "I don't care about money either." In fact, she didn't care about it so much that she bottled it up for 5 years and then asked for it in a twit longer. But since she insists on providing proof, here it is. A PayPal transaction paid to Jesse Werner 4 months before the art requested would be used in the THE Invitational. Not sure if Sky just forgot because she asked about it a year later, but if Jesse didn't give her that money, he definitely pocketed it, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because 3 years later, he stole her entire company. Is there any other payment? Like, did you ever send payments directly to Jisoo, or was it always through Jesse? How often did you send it to Jesse?
That is the only time I have ever sent money to Jesse. I know for an absolute fact that there was no way for me to send anything directly to Jisoo because their stuff was together. Their rent was paid together, their bills were paid together, their food was paid together. It wasn't separate.
When I stopped responding on Facebook, he turned to Twitter. I have no idea what he's been trying to do, but I just gave him one last chance to do the right thing. Again, I always planned on coming forward with my account, but as far as everyone else and their stories, that's not my place.
Ironic.
If you're still in SoCal, I actually want to sit down and talk about this.
In the span of 5 days, you went from, I want to sit down and talk about this, to Sky is an unfeeling psychopath. What? Does anyone see a problem with him reaching out to you when you make a Facebook post and a twit longer about his house? Anyone find that weird? Seems normal to me, right? And when you say you gave him one last chance to do the right thing, what you basically did was blackmail him to support you lying about Vanessa's age, or else you would turn some of that blind rage his way. That was a sick play, by the way. Did you see how she just like casually pulled a Donald Trump? Give us your fucking birth certificate. Release the birth certificate, Vanessa. The people need to know. That's just a joke. That's just a joke. No one go out and do that, please. It may seem like a reach until you realize she didn't call out any of the 20+ adults that were in the house at the time, and instead made a group chat entirely focused on Sky when some of the group members were equally, if not more guilty than Sky.
Hey, I want to let you all know, in my document, I'm going to talk about Sky myself, and how he's been trying to manipulate me from saying anything, even before the Zero incident. But then I'm giving the stage to you guys. I just want to let people know that whatever he says, he is not to be trusted. It's all been in the past few days. He knows he's fucked. You know who is done for. I'm getting grilled for Zero. If you actually care, back me up on that. Otherwise, whatever.
I do actually care.
I don't care if you just say it, Sky. You know what the right thing is. I'll just let you decide what to do. You know that I'm right about Vanessa.
But the Zero thing.
You know that Zero is a weird piece of shit. You know I wouldn't lie about any of this.
I think we all know that's not true. If I'm being honest, I don't think I know much about you at all, Jisoo. Thankfully, I found someone who may be able to widen my perspective. So while I was researching stuff about Jisoo, you came to me with some stories, some pretty concerning stories about things that she's done personally. Would you mind expanding on that a little bit for the audience?
There was a EVO party, I believe EVO 2019. I was directly talking to a person and I mentioned the word girlfriend. I said, even your girlfriend likes Marth, so I'm coming back for my #1 spot. And immediately, she just slapped me on my face. I was just gonna let it go. I said, okay, you know, people's been drinking, it's fine. I'll let it go. So I continued talking to the person, and then a second smack comes across my face. So the guy that I'm speaking to, he literally had to stop the girl and tell her, hey, you can't be going around smacking people. But she kind of gave him like a gesture like, don't tell me what to do, I'm my own woman.
You said that after this all happened, some of it spilled over onto Twitter, but she also came to you personally with an apology?
Yeah, she did come to me to apologize to me, but only because somebody else reached out to her. And I honestly believe she wasn't going to apologize to me. While she did say sorry, I felt like it was very ungenuine based on how the way she was responding. She kept telling me exactly the reason why she was hitting me and how she grew up. And I've also grew up in a terrible neighborhood, and I've never once laid my hands on anybody. So I didn't like that apology. Also, I was gonna let it go, but she kept harping on it and saying your name wasn't added, and I knew that tweet was specifically about me, so it wasn't fair that she was leaving out information and misleading people, trying to pivot the story into people calling her girlfriend based on the work ethic that she had put in the community. That wasn't the case. She literally hit me in my face because I was talking to another person and said your girlfriend. She was confusing like her whole story, saying she was slightly buzzed, she was drunk, she wasn't drunk, and I was like, well, if you weren't drunk, that means you're cognitive of your behavior and what you did, so that kind of makes it worse. She smacked another person as well in the same night. I won't exaggerate, it probably was between 5 and 10 minutes, literally in the same night. She deleted her tweet about me, even though it didn't have my name. I knew it was about me. She was like, okay, I'll delete it, because she was afraid of me. She tried to silence me and try to tell me, oh, but the story's not about you. And I said, yes, it is. And I said, you know what? I'm actually going to tell everybody my side of the story. She said, okay, I'm going to delete it. It actually was a way to silence me. I didn't think of it at that time. And that's why I said, now that I look back on it, it did mentally scar me. You know, I don't want no drama. I don't want no problems, because most of the time, 9 times out of 10, people don't believe men over women.
You also told me about a story where Jisoo was organizing an event and she was looking for a bouncer, and she specifically chose you for whatever reason.
She said there was like a studio that was being rented by a couple of college students, and she was reaching out to friends. Obviously she's of age, but her friends aren't, so she was asking around people, hey, they're willing to pay people to be a bouncer just to let people in. Knowing that this city is very strict on rules like that, I could see why both bouncers didn't agree to her terms, and this is the reason why she went out searching for other people. I said to her, you know, this is they can actually lose their license. She just wanted to pay somebody $200 to just be a bouncer, to allow her friends to come in, people that were underage.
Do you get why I tweeted this out now, Reddit? Don't worry, because your time's coming soon too. Okay, but for real, enough about Jisoo. Let's move on. The next case in the Sky House is that of Brandon Woody, who was also in the group chat, by the way. Woody submitted 2 testimonies to the Redditor Smashcaps in 2016, with 2 different accounts of sexual assault and harassment directed towards a now retired Smash player, Mac D. This situation is a tad confusing, because while Woody presents the scenario that his roommates weren't taking his assault seriously, others seem to remember there being more reciprocation than was being conveyed in the original allegations. Although Sky would come to understand the problems with his previous reaction, he shared the view with an anonymous roommate who made an appearance in his original response. Anyone want to take a guess at who it is? Anyone. Just shout it out the second you think of it. That's right, it's Jisoo! You thought I was gonna move on? Think again!
All I remember is that Brandon was being super irrational about this whole ordeal. Like he never told McCain to ever stop. And it seemed like he liked it at times. Didn't they sneak off into the middle room, allegedly doing things?
Yup. But in his post,
like, Brandon is just a confused kid making some cry for attention.
Again, I'm in no way saying that this was an appropriate conversation to be having about abuse. I'm simply highlighting the amount of confusion surrounding this event at the time. I honestly have no idea why this became a story again, because right after it happened, Woody told Sky in DMs that his response was pretty truthful, more accurate with details like dates, and also admitted fault for getting him involved. But I mean, just look at this guy. Who's gonna turn down a Jacob Wolf interview? Could you say no to that face? I didn't think so. Last but certainly not least, before I turn this over to my colleague, is Keitaro. Keitaro admitted to a case of statutory rape on Twitter in one of the later renditions of the Sky House, which was less of a house and more of a mansion at this point. When introducing his +1 at the party, he would tell everyone that she was 18 years of age. This is corroborated by his roommates at the loft, who all released a conjoined statement on the matter. One of the ongoing memes about Sky is the story about the $350 and how he would break something of value if he didn't receive that amount of money within a certain time frame. All because people kept breaking the rule about unannounced guests. How commenters know that and not only think he would condone random guests, but also illegal shit going down in his house is beyond me. There's even a now deleted statement from the victim where she confirms that Sky knew nothing of this interaction until False brought it to his attention while anonymously tipping off the code of conduct. You also gotta remember, this is happening in a mansion. Not knowing what over 50+ people are doing while also being drunk isn't out of the ordinary. Is Sky a shitty landlord? Yes. Does Sky condone sex trafficking? The fact that I even have to ask that question shows how little critical thought really went into this case in the first place. But for the slow viewers, no, obviously not. What? No. That's all I really had to say about this case, because as far as Keitaro is concerned, he definitely did that shit. Now that all the serious stuff is out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and let Mr. Diorio break down Sky's debt in full detail. But don't go anywhere, because this information is still crucial to clear up very common misconceptions. Take it away, Nick. But I swear to God, if you use that blinding light effect in my video, I'm gonna fucking...
Okay, Jeffrey Epstein is defined as... Wait, no, hold on, that's not right. Jeffrey Epstein is defined by UrbanDictionary.com as an American socialite financer and convicted sex offender. Sky Williams is not, nor has he ever been, Jeffrey Epstein. Throughout this video, my colleague Technicals has run you through the most serious and severe allegations that occurred in relation to Sky Williams and his infamous Sky houses. It's no secret that Sky Williams has accumulated a significant amount of debt. Sky himself is quoted that he owes as high as $250,000 total, and as far as the internet is concerned, many have insinuated that Sky doesn't even plan to pay this money back. An article that covered Sky's story back in February of 2021 states that he was loaned individual sums of money as large as $13,000, $10,750, and as high as $55,000, which helped accumulate that $250,000 number we talked about previously. To understand how this was even possible in the first place and why Sky borrowed this much money, we have to build a mental picture of what a Sky house actually was.
This right here is the house. This is the layout.
What you're looking at now is a crusty mock-up Sky made to showcase one of the 5 different Sky houses that existed. The Sky house itself was birthed as an early stream house concept that crammed approximately 20 people into 4 bedrooms. And in this specific Sky house, there was more room per square foot in the cat room than there was for some of the people who lived there full time. And if you think that sounds like a literal disaster, wait until you realize that Sky was apparently paying 50 to 75% of the rent in the house, and many of these housemates chose to live in these conditions free of charge. As you can probably imagine, allegations of favoritism and a hierarchy arose through several Twitlongers. However, I'd probably just call it anarchy. It was clear to most that Sky would get extremely frustrated and often take things too far. This was best showcased by leaked messages where he threatened to destroy something of value to each individual housemate unless they grouped up and paid him $350. In these messages, Sky threatens to break private property of everyone in the house, including those who pay rent, physically fight people if they try to stop him, or call the police if he thinks they would win that fight. These are objectively bad and indefensible actions taken by Sky, but I think there is something interesting here to note. One of the major Sky House rules was that Sky was to be notified of all guests that would be coming in and out of the house. This aggression by Sky was sparked by one of the many instances of a guest being present seemingly unannounced. For someone who is so heavily criticized for standing idly by while terrible things happen in the house, it's clear from these messages that Sky at least attempts to have some form of order in regards to knowing every single person who's inside the house at a given time.
The guest rule was created for a multitude of reasons. The most important one was that I was responsible for anyone that came in. Anyone and everyone. If anything happens to anyone and I don't know, I'm just completely
At the end of the day, one man could never sustain this type of lifestyle across several large team houses, and anyone with a higher than room temperature IQ could have predicted that eventually this would catch up to Sky Williams. Due to the living conditions we just talked about, and Sky's public leave of absence from content creation in 2018, these factors ultimately contributed to the insurmountable debt that Sky has been widely criticized for getting into. Besides the houses itself becoming a disaster, there was also family issues that contributed to why this debt existed in the first place. One of the most shared Twitlongers targeting Sky Williams comes from his former roommate Spencer Samuelson, and for good reason. He's the guy who lent Sky the $55,000 that went into the house. The reason Sky needed a loan in this instance was due to him paying what he thought was his father's cancer treatment. In reality, and I promise I'm not joking, Sky found out that his father used this money to get penis enlargement surgery. And one of the funniest things about this Twitlonger, in the most twisted fucking way possible, is that people initially interpreted this statement that Sky himself got cosmetic surgery for his penis, which was probably the hardest right turn in any drama I've ever covered will ever. The reason Samuelson made this twit longer in the first place, though, was because he felt wronged on a very personal level due to things that happened in his life, and he didn't believe Sky initially. Sky actually reconciled with his father and confronted him on the issue, and confirmed that his story was actually true, though. One more interesting thing about Samuelson was he was the guy who swiped Sky's router and ended the suffering from everybody who had to watch the initial response stream Sky did. Everyone involved, including Sky himself, admits that stream was a disaster, and it's a perfect example of why it's important to take time before responding to serious allegations.
I made time to socialize when I wasn't working. Most of our day-to-day lives is what I had envisioned at first. A never-ending Smash Fest, just sprinkled a bit with League of Legends. A never-ending Smash Fest, a never-ending Smash Fest.
Yeah, buddy, I would have picked my words a bit more carefully on that one. I guess this is the part of the video where I give my opinion on why this is a bad thing. Maybe I'll take some slack for this take, but in reality, I don't really care. Don't get me wrong, I feel bad for many of those who have lent Sky money over the years, and I understand why this needed to be public knowledge. People rightfully wanted to warn others about loading Sky money in the future in case this happened again. There was also notably Sky's toxic attitudes towards his housemates, including specifically those who paid to be there. That was pretty unacceptable, and Sky will be the first guy to admit that to you, by the way. I genuinely do think that there is room for legitimate criticism inside of these allegations, but aside from that, I really don't care. Sky Williams being $250,000 in debt does not affect my ability to enjoy his League of Legends streams, just like Kanye West being $53 million in debt doesn't make his albums less enjoyable to listen to. I don't feel like my Spotify streaming numbers are 50 Cent using me, the viewer, to pay for poor business decisions that landed him between $10 and $50 million in debt back in 2015. Nobody gets mad at Mike Tyson for going on WWE because he was having financial trouble. While I think it's worth bringing this up initially, ultimately, I don't think Sky's career should be damaged beyond repair or destroyed entirely because he made some pretty terrible business decisions. And I'm not alone on this. Neither does his former roommate and one of his quote-unquote biggest detractors, Spencer Samuelson.
Well, when I made the statement, I didn't think that it would be nearly as big as it got to be. And I think my statement in combination with others just totally destroyed Sky's career. And I wish that, I think that there should be repercussions and stuff like that, but I don't think his entire career should be taken away. And I think people should just look at the facts more instead of calling him like Jeffrey Epstein and other things that just, in my experience with Sky, are not true. Yeah, I guess the only thing I really regret is just how many people saw the tweet.
I sat down and had a discussion with Spencer Samuelson, who recently repaired his relationship with Sky. He's the one who released the Google document that I just explained to you with the penis story inside of it, and he's also owed approximately 22% of Sky's total debt.
At the time that I wrote the statement, I didn't hear Sky's chat that he had with his dad or anything like that, and I asked Sky for proof of it several times, and he never gave me proof of the penis surgery part. He only told me about it. So now that I know that in more detail, of course my statement would be different now that that information something I know.
While Samuelson is owed a significant sum of money from Sky and stands by most of his initial statement, he pretty much is on the same wavelength as me on this. Ultimately, I think the issue is best resolved between Sky and those people he owes money to, as they're the ones who are directly affected by his actions. At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, if the others genuinely want their money, it is in their best interest to let Sky stream and pay them back. He's been slowly chipping away at this debt for the last few months, and since his initial response video, he's paid back approximately $30,000. Call me old-fashioned, but that seems like the smarter alternative as opposed to making his name synonymous with Jeffrey Epstein so he can't get a real job and wanting him banned from every streaming platform so he can't pay you back that way.
In the beginning of the video, I asked, how many people do you have to give PTSD before you're considered an abuser? The answer should be 1. The fact that there would even be more than that is fucking ridiculous. Like, come on. What the fuck? It's 1, dude. You give someone PTSD that's like... Yeah, you fucked up. What is this, Vietnam? What are you, fucking Vietnam? What are you, Vietnam? Jisoo became a voice for women in gaming, not because she sought justice, but because it was a convenient avenue for her to vent and project her frustrations onto others. Rather than focusing on Sky's terrible behavior and treatment of housemates, it instead manifested into a group project to ruin his career. There was no line drawn between Jeffrey Epstein and a bad landlord, because that wasn't convenient for the people who wanted to throw him in a psych ward and make sure he was waiting tables. Sky has issues, and more importantly, Sky has debt. But what he doesn't have is a record of condoning and hiding sexual abuse for his own benefit. I'm not gonna name names, but the fact that others knew about this stuff and did next to nothing compared to Sky really pisses me off. Where do you get off standing on a soapbox when over half of your community is defending underage drinking on Twitter? None of you are any better, and yet you've tricked yourselves into thinking you're different. If you can start a hashtag after fucking over Nairo and then give him thousands of dollars, the least you could do is write a tweet. Hashtag apologize to Sky. Because we've already done irreparable damage to his life. What's one more tweet?
Damage is critical. Damage critical. Damage is critical. Damage critical. Damage is critical. Damage is critical.
Peep this. It's officially been a month since I posted the Sky House video. The good news, Sky has officially made a comeback to Twitter. He's been posting pretty frequently there. Pretty much gone back to like semi-daily streams on Twitch, which is really nice. Also, we got 16 on trending. I don't know if that's due to the fact that over half the people thought I was talking about Sky Does Minecraft. Either way, a win is a win, so I'll take that too. In the future, when it's someone who has a name like Paper or Rock, I should probably add an identifier afterwards, like his last name. Oh, should I apologize to the fucking Sky? Oh, it's really funny, dude. Ooh, what am I supposed to apologize to the Sky for? He still hasn't made a comeback video on his YouTube, but I've heard it's in the works. You know, he's just kind of taking his time with it. So for all you Sky Williams fans, look forward to that in the future. Now, as far as the people that were directly criticized in the video, in the case of Leffen, who called me a cockroach in my initial criticism of Jisoo on Twitter.
For those that don't know the context, I made a emotional tweet at the checking technicals.
After I released my video, he went entirely silent on the situation and is just blocking anyone that brings it up. Let me get this straight. So, Hax was banned for inciting harassment against Leffen. That's fair, I guess. But when Leffen teams up with a manipulative opportunist like Jisoo, spreading multiple false allegations that ended up in a woman having PTSD and 2 people wanting to kill themselves, we can let that slide. That's just Leffen being Leffen, dude. No hugs, Bobby Scar, Toph? No, they're not going to talk about that. Oh, no, but Hax? No, that guy's mentally ill. Yeah, he needs help. Speaking of the Melee martyr herself, after the video dropped, she blocked presumably thousands of people. It has to be somewhere in the thousands. But she not only steps away from the internet for a little bit and then comes back completely ignoring everything, she also makes a joke out of it. If Mango wins, I'll apologize for believing Marth Fox is 60-40. You got me, Jisoo. For a second there, I thought you were gonna take accountability. I thought you felt bad for ruining their lives. That's where the joke is. Whoop! Right over my head. I did not see that coming. Let the haters hate. Yeah, fuck those haters. Wanting to clear their names and shit? One of the people that I tried to get in contact with originally ended up posting a screenshot of a DM conversation that she was having with Jisoo, in which she shows that after she had a very public concern for whether Sky was going to self-harm when everything was going down, Jisoo links that tweet to her and then responds by saying,
Danny, I thought you were a good person with the right intentions. If you think anything he said was acceptable in any way and that he is redeemable, you're as bad as him. Don't talk to me ever again.
To which Jez replies, excuse me? Because I don't want him to fucking kill himself? I'm a bad person now? And I presume that's the end of the conversation right there, because it says this person is unavailable on Messenger, because I think she blocked her. So I don't think it's very far-fetched to think that when they were campaigning to get Zero's wellness check taken down after he did attempt suicide, that was just another little nudge where it's like, I'm not saying close any doors here, I'm just saying, like, there's not many things I talk about where I get personally invested and, like, Like now I'm angry, like me, the person, Brandon. Brandon is angry at this. Not technicals, not a character, me. You're telling me this fucking... I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. This fucking bitch wants to go online, ruin multiple people's lives, just flagrantly be fine with them fucking killing themselves, and we're just gonna let that shit slide. At this point, I really do feel like it's because she's a woman. If it was anyone else, it's been shown that action will be taken way fucking sooner. Sure, okay, that shit happened to you, that sucks. But that's not a pass for you to go on a warpath and start ruining other people's lives just because you feel wronged. God, it must be nice to have a pussy. It must be real fucking nice to have a pussy, I swear to God. Enough about that. Let's move on to Jacob Wolf.
In the case of like what it tried to do to break down my article on the whole situation, it did nothing to discredit Brandon Woody, who was a big part, though I interviewed him twice for my story.
Really? It did nothing to discredit Brandon Woody? Did you see the part of the video where Brandon Woody directly said that it was his fault that Sky ever got involved with the situation? Did you see that part? Or how about the part afterwards that you conveniently ignored, where the original person who made the statement with Brandon Woody said that Brandon Woody manipulated it to pit both Smash Caps and Sky against each other because Woody was not being very truthful. And then years later, Woody takes this opportunity to talk to a journalist and rehash his story when it had already been solved fucking years before. I mean, you call yourself a journalist and you can't even do the assigned reading. If you read Sky's original response to these allegations, it wouldn't even be a fucking problem. He already, like, addressed and debunked most of the shit that you put in your article. That's just there. You could have just read that.
The only person that YouTuber talked to, this is why I say it's in bad faith, were Sky Williams and Zero. He did not talk to any of the other roommates, who talked to me, by the way, and probably talked to him.
Did you even watch the video? I talked to Orion, one of the roommates. Okay, I've already disproven you, but we can keep going. I talked to Samuelson, the person he owes the most money. Hell, I talked to Sky. I have all of Sky's Facebook archives. If I wanted to, I could post Skycock on the timeline like that. You want to talk about journalistic integrity and getting too personal with the people that you're interviewing? First off, I'm not a fucking journalist. I do this shit in my free time. Second off, you would never be able to get all of Sky's Facebook archives. So, hey, if that's what it takes to not be a journalist, I accomplished way more than you ever could in a 4-hour interview. So you can take your journalistic integrity and shove it right up your ass. I don't give a fuck about that shit.
There's a big video that came out this past week that's kind of resurfaced it by a YouTuber named Technicals, who's kind of the same cloth as Keemstar.
Is that an accurate description, by the way, Jake? Because I don't want you to get caught out. Like, they both do drama YouTube content, or do you mean he is similarly controversial?
They do both.
Well, you compare me to Keemstar, that's pretty standard. As we all know, there's only ever been 3 people to ever cover drama in all of YouTube history, so I'll give you that one.
He's a drama YouTuber who is controversial among the rest of the community. From screenshots we saw this past week, acting in bad faith as he wants to dox a 15-year-old.
Did you just accuse me of trying to dox a 15-year-old? Hey, get up. I said get the fuck up. Get your fucking hands up. All eyes on me. All eyes on me. Yeah, fuck it. What the fuck, man? You don't just say shit like that. Let me break it down to you again, Jacob Wolf, since you don't seem to understand the situation at all. When they were talking, she was 14. This happened 7 years ago. So if you do the math properly, little nigga, what does that equal?
21.
Thank you. I'm not trying to dox a 15-year-old. You're referring to a private conversation between me and Zero, where all I'm talking about is figuring out who the anonymous person who made an accusation is. I don't see a problem in that. That seems like fucking investigative journalism 101. Who said this? That's the question we're answering. Who said this? It's not like I can just fucking hit up Jisoo and be like, hey, I know you have her phone number. Can you slide that my way? It's like you're just grasping at straws to establish what my premise is when you don't even know what the fuck is going on.
The problem with the technical videos is it tries to discredit Jisoo by saying she was vindictive and that there was a group chat with the roommates of the Sky House. Put yourselves in the shoes of someone who was traumatized. Like, yeah, of course she's upset. Does that make what she said any less truthful? No.
No, you're right. The fact that she lied makes what she says less truthful. I don't understand why you're caping for her so hard when you're supposed to be the unbiased reporter. I mean, I guess I would be too if I got swindled into making a hit piece by a high school dropout. Let's talk about my next and final point, which would be about Smash Reddit. The thing about Smash Reddit is that Reddit is already kind of cancer, but Smash Reddit especially so. You want to do the rest of the video from my angle? This is what I see. Technical's POV experience. Fuck. When I posted the Skyhouse video, originally they left it up because the video had new information and they thought it would be important to understand what was going on. But after a random DM leak from one of my streams where a lot of people took it out of context, they kind of decided on their own that I was manipulating information and knowingly lying about situations when I never lied about anything. If I've lied about anything, it's fucking public, so feel free to call it out and point that out, but I don't think there's anywhere I've done that, and I don't plan on doing that. But that's what everyone started saying, so they took down the Reddit thread, and then the person Smashcaps made a post calling me a liar and saying I misrepresented the Brandon Woody case, and they really brought my integrity into question. But after talking to them and after they talked to Sky, they realized that a lot of what they said was inaccurate, so they repealed what they said. They apologized to Sky and me. I find it interesting that they would remove my post, but leave up the one calling me a liar where everyone's kind of defaming me in the replies. We're gonna keep this post where the person admitted to it being factually incorrect. Yeah, we're gonna leave that up for posterity, but we won't allow that person to actually post where they're apologizing for the statements they made, but we're unbiased. There's no narrative being controlled over here. The subreddit is so blatantly biased, it's not even funny. Like, they're not even trying to hide the fact that it is so clearly an echo chamber. What's the moral of the story? They want to sell you the fact that holding yourself and other people accountable is very important. It's not cancel culture, you're just holding people accountable. It's just a different way to justify a harassment campaign. If you're gonna run a harassment campaign, just fucking say that. You don't need to say, oh, this is about accountability. It's like, no, it's about fuck this person, and that's fine, but at least you would be more honest saying, I just want to fuck with this person because I don't like them, rather than saying it's about accountability, because it's not about accountability. You've made that very clear with your consistency on the topic. Yeah.
Did you want to go to Cracker Barrel for lunch? Are you hungry or anything?
You want to go to lunch? I can come.
Asking you out of kindness. Do you want to come?
Yeah, I can come. I just have to finish recording, like, I'm literally doing the outro.
Okay, well, finish recording because my mom is